I'm here with Ron Schweiger, the Brooklyn Borough Historian Emeritus, and we are here at Bet Shalom Ve'emet Reform Temple. He will tell us a little bit about the history of the temple.
Hi. Our congregation goes back to 1911, and it was founded by a woman named Hannah Hirsch, and it was and still is, always have been, a Reform congregation. And it started with about 35 families that met in people's living rooms here in the community, and they didn't have a place to have services. And they would meet at the Savoy Hall at 854 Flatbush Avenue, where they would have some of their meetings, although many meetings were held in people's homes. And Savoy Hall was like a catering hall, so they would have services there for a while. The first high holiday services were held at the Unitarian Church on Beverly Road and East 19th Street. That little church is still there today. They started to raise money to build a sanctuary, to build a synagogue. They first were going to buy a plot of land on the corner of Westminster Road and Dorchester Road in 1912 for $9,000, just an empty plot of land. But the people at that location said, well, we can't have a church on that corner. So we had to look elsewhere. They found another empty lot right here on the corner of Church Avenue and Marlborough Road that was selling for about $3,000 less, $6,300. However, the Prospect Park South Association said, well, go look for another spot. We'll help you find another location. And the congregation fought it, and they really wanted this location. The trolley cars on Church Avenue, there were no buses, there were trolley cars. And this is 1912. And they finally agreed when the Prospect Park South Association said that if you build your synagogue, build it back, not so that it's not even, so that the front of the synagogue is not even with the front of the houses on the block. And that's why we have a very wide sidewalk here in front of our building. So they started to raise money to a building fund. And eventually they had money, and they were going to build this sanctuary, and it cost $40,000. This was in 1913 and was completed in 1914, and the first high holiday services were held here in September of 1914. And in 2014, we had a special service here to commemorate the very first service here 100 years prior. The bima that I'm standing on here was originally wood. The beautiful columns on either side, they were not what you see here. I have a photograph here from 1936, before a renovation was done. And you can see that the columns were these beautiful Gothic fluted columns, very similar to some of the front porches of the homes here in the neighborhood in Flatbush. So the bima was made of wood. The columns were certainly different. Now, in the 1930s, there was a 2-year renovation of the sanctuary. So the bima changed from wood to marble, and the ark behind me, which also was originally wood, became bronze. Okay? Now, the picture I'm going to show you now is 2 years after the first picture, 1938. And you can see that the bima has a lighter color to it. It's marble. And the beautiful fluted columns now have wood in a squared off pattern. And we think that maybe underneath the wood is the original columns. I would love to drill a hole in the back of one of the columns to see what's there. Maybe we can release and show again those beautiful columns. We'll see. We have several stained glass windows that are all original. The stained glass windows were put in not initially when the sanctuary was completed in 1914, but they were added in, I believe, 1916 and 1917. The one behind me here is beautiful, and we had these big ones restored in, I think, 2018, 2019, and this is King Solomon. And fortunately, we have the sun shining today, and you can see how bright this is now. Fully restored about 7 or 8 years ago. And it was installed here in, again, 1916 or 17. On the other side of the sanctuary, if we zoom in on that, that is Moses with the 10 Commandments. And that also was restored at the same time as King Solomon was restored. We started with 35 families. The congregation grew rapidly. As the homes were being built, the developers built these homes to attract the wealthy, Wall Street people, doctors, lawyers. And these homes originally were selling for anywhere from $6,500 to $10,000 or $12,000. Now you say, that's not a lot. Back then, it was a lot. They started building these homes here in 1899 to about 1915. And those were the prices of the homes. Today, many of these homes are over $2-3 million. Maybe there might be one in there that's over $4 million. So times have definitely changed in 123 years. Now, as the congregation grew rapidly, they needed more space. So by 1920, only 6-7 years later, they needed more space for classroom space, office space. The house right next door to the sanctuary was for sale. The woman, Mrs. Fuchs, was selling it for $21,000. So you see how the prices started to go up. So a building committee was established and negotiated, and it was purchased for $21,000 so that a new community building was built alongside the sanctuary. And that was completed in 1922. By the late 1930s and early 1940s, Flatbush was very Jewish, very Jewish. The congregation now had slightly more than 900 family units, which included married couples, singles. Look how much that grew. By the 1960s, the surrounding community along Ocean Avenue and east of there started to change dramatically. The demographics started to change. Older congregants were either passing away, or some families were actually moving out to the so-called greener pastures of the suburbs, to Long Island, New Jersey. So the congregation was losing a good part of its membership. And by the late 1980s, we had approximately 190 to 210 family units. So we needed more money. The building was old, repairs had to be made, and in order to survive, we had to rent out a good portion of our building to a school for children with special needs. And that saved us with that income. And now, what happened in 1990, another Reformed congregation in the Flatbush Midwood neighborhood, Ocean Avenue and Avenue I, Progressive Temple, Progressive Sharazetic. They sold their building and merged with us in 1990, and that helped quite a bit. 4 years later, a smaller congregation on Newkirk Avenue and Ocean Avenue, Community Temple Beth Orr, they sold their small congregation and they merged with us. So Temple Beth Emeth of Flatbush now became Temple Beth Emeth V'Or Progressive Sharazetic of Flatbush. By 2010, I was president here from 04 to 09. In 2010, I was approached by one of the presidents of Progressive Temple Beth Ahavath Shalom, another Reformed congregation, which was a combined merger as we were. And they were in Borough Park, which was Orthodox, but it was a Reformed congregation. It was an older congregation, and they were not doing well because it was an older congregation. They did not have a religious school. No young families were moving. No Reform Jews were moving into Borough Park. So they approached me, and it took several years of negotiations. And by 2018, I think, or 2019, the merge was completed. So Progressive Temple Beth Ahavath Shalom merged with Temple Beth Emet Progressive Shaarei Zedek in 2018, 2019. I forgot the exact year. Well, how do we combine their long name with our long name with a new merged congregation? Well, we came up with Beth Shalom Emet Reformed Temple. A little of theirs, a little of ours. And if you take the first letter of Beth Shalom Emet Reformed Temple, it spells the Yiddish word B'SHERT, which means it was meant to be. And that's where we are today.